Namda Zurin, Seja Sashin, Denzin Pamir, Lenk, Shirani Dena, Chugun, Tojo, Togun, La Chasa. Dokam Jesus, Soya Pachel, Sambo Chube, Chuji Ingantam, Kavi, Yato Chuchan Cassis, or Nayo Singer, Chemin Lotus, Rekan Sabe, Mendro Tambi, Surim Nilam, Chelo, Chamacham, Tishin Kushi, Choterse, Yonzena Manchuba, Shella, Namkatan, Bessinjin, Tamche, Sanjiji Kumbarum, Pachinaja, Topraja, Nyembe, Kulon, Janju, the Satab, the Seman now the show.
Please listen to these teachings today with the motivation of bodhicitta, generating the intent. May I become a Buddha for the benefit of all beings. May I do all that is in my power to lead all sentient beings who are as vast as space and who have all been my mothers to the stage of Buddhahood.
다 가장 세계 시대 동아 람도 캠프 람도 쳐와 동아 람도 쳐와 스나다 이게 람도 쳐와 차도 요래
So last time we saw that the 4 verses from verse 11 to verse 15 are the verses about bringing suffering onto the path, or one can also say bringing negative circumstances onto the path.
디나네 가장 조조데 그랬으나 디 아주 미치게 나라 미튼 저기 노트로바 더 주노트로바 지치 네 소소라 냠바 메네 네바 제바 줌세 메베 조 줌세 연나다 메나다 조 소소라 네바 개와 네 숨바데 무슈크 주숨네 드니 ताजी मेरा पाबियाला सोबरो मेरा पाबाम 준주 제바 제 다 덴조게 리테 나랑도 메시나라 용두 드니 탑 컨데게 토네 아니 동네 난고고요 다 디기 코르테 가장 침바테
So the key points of these last 4 verses that we saw were about how to deal with situations that are not positive in our lives. So it was about what happens if somebody, steals our wealth, our belongings, or what if somebody harms us without us having done anything wrong to them, or also what to do when we are being criticized or slandered directly or indirectly. That's what.
덴조게 리테 나서 단 소소 기타 지난 소소기 레르와 메세게 레라 됴네다 딘데 게 아게 라소버 체용구 요래 이게 덴조 라소버 체바데 소소 뮤기 레 사바데네 총바레테 이나양 알아서 갑레 레임바 아니 게레야 칼리카부 용 지야 칼리카부 용구 요래 얘한테 쳐서나 삼삼 대야라 소바든지 tentugu marete ena yata tende kapso 잠바다 닌지기 찌스네 드니 다 가상된소 제로 지 종와라 소버 제토나 드니 말아서 제다 미 다 인도 띵어라서 셈들라야 제 셈기 촌나 마테올라 소버든데 용야 돈조 양 도베탑 돈조 냠내기 용도고 요래 이 차도 띵어라서 텔라테네 냠내 양제 도고 요래 돈조야 냠내 차데 요래.
Of course, whenever those things happen in our lives, then that is because of our karma, because we have accumulated karmic seeds that then ripen in those situations. So, of course, that's the case. And sometimes we cannot really do much about outer circumstances. But as practitioners, we can always deal with a situation based on our mindset. So, for instance, if we can, in such a negative circumstance or happening, if we can remind ourselves to practice and bring loving kindness and compassion towards the situation, towards the person that's harming us, then already we are transforming the situation. Because, of course, it will always happen that we will have circumstances that will give us bad feelings where we will not feel content about. But if we use them and if we use them for our practice, then that's really helpful, such as, all kinds of moods we can transform, and even depressive states or difficult moments, we can transform them and apply the intentions of loving kindness and compassion to our lives and to the situations, the persons involved. And we can try to apply the advices that are given here in the booklet of how to deal with those situations. So in the best case, such a circumstance transforms, becomes part of our practice directly. That's all.
제가 말아서 출룩 게 랍자당 만델네로 제가 시엔드 밀라 동안이 연구요래. 때 류기 동안에 직샘기 동안 연구요래.
So in generally, that's nothing to do with religious advice, but there are two kinds of suffering that we perceive. One is the suffering of the body, and one is the suffering of the mind.
그래. 변나 류기 동안다 샘기 동안이게 나네. 다고 내당질을 다 네가 섭춘보로 이나 또 네가 직신한 사우 차대 요르데 에나 푹도고 주나 샘기 동안에 신앙 차기래.
So generally, these both types of suffering, based on a circumstance situation, we always experience both kinds of suffering, but the one that is more heavy or more fearful is the mental suffering.
근데 변나랑도 류부게 동해 도진용 바이나 다 류라 민주 제발라 소버랬더니 류스의 탑 된대 연구요래. 다 신도 나나랑도 다 류디 파 지네 야 류사벌 랭기레데 디디 류게 동해 도데 토스토스 주와데 로고래. 어디서 요랭보 요랭통게 계절에마도 그 류부게 동아데 그 미타바란시인데 그 조보게 아니 주로 그래. 동아데 매바차로 그래.
So, for example, the body, when the body suffers, then let's say we are ill, then we can recover because we can take some medicine. Let's say there's a medicine, we are ill in some way where there is a medicine, so we can actually recover. And even if we are very ill, then the body will decease, but then we will take a new body. So the suffering of the body is just a matter of time that it will transform. So that means that because the body is impermanent, it will quickly change. Even if we have suffering at a certain moment, that's going to change just in a matter of time, and the suffering will transform into something else. That's all.
얘나야 샘기 동에 대 레장 신앙 사기를 가야서나 샘기 동에 레야데 pena lugi dunga dawo de ko jujen pena che chunja la sobo tobo ne to ne tini soso ge lu de la che ga ma la sobo jone tini de yungu yorwa ya bula mura tabya la sobo tini ge tini da lugu tongbo meba tini ne den zore ena sem ge dunga de junglo de ko tachi도 진대진이 자기 레스야기 템포요 말해. 삼삼 나와데 야부기 토네 진앙술라 야부기 토네 양수수sem로 동해 연구 요래라 삼삼 나와 동해 나와데 동화 근데 나와코나 제 미상웨게 토네야 동해 연구를 때인데 샘기 동해 때 간이 마용세 타지도 템포요 말라 셰셰야 칼레카부 쇼지레 대야 타지도 미니 그저 심진이 연구력이 고육니 연구력이 간이 연구를 띠 랍투야 요 말이야.
Yeah. But the mental suffering is way more scary because it's so unknown. It's not really clear how it arises, when it arises, because of what it arises. For physical suffering, it easily appears, but it also easily shifts or can even dissolve. For example, and we can see it quite clearly. We know that it happens, for example, if we get hurt, let's say we cut ourselves with a knife or something, then we know that that's going to have a physical impact, that's going to make us suffer. Or maybe if we get hurt in a car accident or something, it's very clear, and mentally we can follow the occurrence of physical suffering. But for mental suffering, it's way more difficult because the way how it appears, when it manifests, we don't really see it clearly because it's not stable. It doesn't just have like one way of appearing. And therefore, sometimes mental suffering can arise from a positive experience, or sometimes it can arise from a not a positive appearance or perception. And therefore, it's really not clear at all based on what circumstances mental suffering arises. It doesn't follow a logical line that we could really, logically follow and see. Sometimes, maybe it arises based on a situation with sentient beings, or maybe because of an environment. It's very hard to know where and how it arises, how it appears. That's all.
이제 전주 샘백의 냠내도서 만차 초치네 페나 샘기 동해든 저 삼노 자 첨부 땅야라야 펜도 쉬고 요래 데인데 데라 때네 때네 알아서 동해든 답에나 샘기 동해 진나와 라 강종샤 용외 값소 따든 솔로게 파 제 삼노 땅땅 안데 나 땅고요 로종 그림바 간데 제고요 된소 라테네 테네 양 따다 샘기 동해 된소 매바스야 라펜도 자신보 요래.
That's all. So therefore, most bodhisattva practices, they are really focusing on the mind, such as, making the mind more vast, more spacious, so that it can contain mental suffering in a very different way. And so that it contains a lot of instructions of how to direct or use the mind when mental suffering appears, how to train the mind. So then we talk about the Lojong instructions, the mind training instructions, the different stages of how to train the mind based on mental suffering when it arises. So all of these instructions are actually extremely beneficial to reduce and eliminate mental suffering.
라스트 테네 이게 저라시라마 슈그미야 제 소차기 말에 데인데 다 대가 슈슈니 다 다른데 섭지 주룩 되래. 섭 지지 주룩 버되래. 데 주룩 버데 소 가르스나 아 텔레 론자 람도 키와서 해야 되죠. 다 딜라 다기 부신 집에 장비미 달라 다신 타오르치나야. 네지타 비불라 마신도 라버즈와 캐슬라렌스네. 데레.
So then that's, I don't want to say much more about this. Let's go on with the text now with verse 16, which is about um, how to bring onto the path when someone whom we have shown great kindness towards is not repaying that kindness. So the verse reads, even should someone for whom you have cared, as for your own child, treats you hostilely, behaving towards this person with special affection, as a mother behaves towards a sick child, this is what the bodhisattvas do.
다디 베나 침장로를 찾으나 수수기 부든 수수기 부 뭐뭐 근데 야나 수수기 유링도 아니 다로 이나 되게데 다 자발라마 도이나 수수기 기죽 다 대도에 다 뭐랍더림바 연구 여러와
Mhm.
근데 지다 어 다게 부시 제버장 비미스 세인데 다디 간소레 땅 알아서 메시지라 그래 제 미직도 도그라 미순다 이나 베나 소소 부다고 함 소소게 파마다고 기에 가서 그래 제와테 대사기 강사 제 강사 때 담보 대베 가서 소소게 파직 통샤서 아니 담시에서 데이터베게다 베 쇼기 니오예 데비기미 베 통샤서로 이나양 근데 제라 본네서 팀불라 때네 되니 간소리 소소게 다다고 이렇게 토다파 줘야 다 된데네다 mambu지 용세 버와 조라 요래 조 조모 두조야 연구를 침상에 나라야 지초가 심하게 발라든데 연구요래 근데 긴된게 나라야 변하지 조 긴된 수속이 기초 때 된다고 라서고 된데 연구요라 다 된소 제다 된소 아주 메세게 나라 된소 아 용예바지다 용세바다 된데 기르치래
Mhm. So, for example, this verse is talking about when, and this is something that happens to all of us, when we are very close to someone. Sometimes it can be our child, or it can be a dear friend or a partner, or maybe it can be the students of the Lama. And at the beginning of the relationship, we are very close, we share a lot, we are very affectionate towards each other, and then at some point that person to whom we were so connected and to whom we showed a lot of kindness and affection turns into one's enemy. So this can really come in all kinds of relationships. It can be within friendships, it can be within marriage between husband and wife that this happens, or even between the disciples of a spiritual teacher. That this so between teacher and disciples, that can happen in all these different relationships. That's all.
네. 다 된대긴 내다 용도 다 next step 타오데 다 공부 제만 보야 돼. 다 가르쳐 그랬으나 다 된댕 알아 당연 버직 다 손스 수수기년에 다 nom주 연하다 nom주 면하다 다 된댕 바로 보게 당할 빼니오 인딩이 미치게 강사지긴 알아 된대 주다 다 된대지 되네 로자지 제손스 다디 제유 사회 제라 다디 다 수수기 직 다 딩년밖에 초랐다고 도기 삼부 초랐다고 도세야데 덴데 쉬야요 말해 디 상부지 수고나 수수기 수야래 Nyemba sugu samna susu suyare mato, Kurang di sambu rangla dhokire, di nyemba rangla dhokire sayate, chidang dende chiga rule dhaw suji ki suyo mare, di sungi di soso yendu, ta di sambu chola sugu dugi, nyemba chola sugu du, di susu samna dayare, chidang.
So then once that has so it starts, the relationship starts out in a positive way, we are very close and so on and so forth, and then at some point something happens, and this person to whom we were so affectionate and gave a lot, that person uh, starts seeing us as their enemy for whatever reason, or the relationship completely shifts. So then to how we are seeing the situation, whether we perceive it as a positive or a negative situation, that's definitely depends on us, on our way of seeing this. Mm-hmm.
Re, di tachido, ka dasana, ya kasore, da rangi do ta goya chik, da rangi do manchage dili kala zisha goyro, dili loja di mi marab resine pa zisha ro, di zisha di ko shedan jire ma do, moma chagi re, mare se di soso rale digire.
So it really depends on us then how we see this person. Normally in our social conventions, if somebody to whom we were kind becomes our enemy, that they turn the back on us, then of course the first impulse will be to say they are really not behaving in a good way. But honestly, it's not that there is a rule for that, that we could say that with certainty, that that's not okay, that this person now is, behaving wrongly.
Di yin da, da di nyenpe ke tola suyo shaba ina, da nga ranzo da di nyenpe chola suyo shaba ina, da di la chun kare yungudu, yunden kare yungudu, nga ranzo samla jitana, da ji ta sare, nyenpe kola daiwa ina, da ta sare chala, so so ki duda namba kundu, chiga lo madewa suya jik suyo sare, so so ki. 다 되게 다 되게 드로보이나 다 되게 마주도 되게 침상이나 다 가래이나면은 되게 게임게 아니 가란 속에 마데와 민투메 초다 비타도 오치다 따사와이나 다다 서치라 다 대단 드라이브게 탑대 당기래 거디나 대 드라이브 탑대 다 고랑 따 드라이브게 미나 참마다 카드라 고래야나 그런 속에 침주 용수 쪽보다 카드야 다 간다 삽고야 사제 찍라 레서래 다 덴데 제바이나 자승부 쇼지레 소소이나야 소소 강 마시 봐도 덴데 제고래라 데다 덴조 가서 가지 말한서 양자지 투바이나 마지 바다 마데와지 차야지리 딜레 도바 말한서 그 야부게 돌았다 하셔가지 콜라이나 분 락말 레장 나랑 댕네 셈데네 오늘 콜라 야부 지야바이 데나신 야부 차와 쇼 삼베게 삼바 삼부 토네 샤샤바이나 데네 마음발라 든데기 나라서 다기 쉐바나시 삽사 라오다 데네 미텐초레 가고야 든데기 네다자니 용구마레 셈라이나 시대 용구레
you know, so once that has happened, that someone who was close to us sort of becomes our enemy, then that's really up to us whether that situation will transform into a real problem, into something negative, or if that situation might even transform into something positive. And for example, if we perceive that person who has turned their back on us, although we were so kind towards them, so close, then first of all, it's not going to make us happy at all. It's going to make us very uncomfortable, sad, and so on and so forth. And sometimes that person, as we said, can be, a friend, a partner, maybe it's even a sibling or a family member. And then if we see them as sort of, wrong behaving, and that they are not doing the right thing, so sort of we are in conflict and they are not behaving in the right way, then we are actually creating a huge conflict, probably even inside maybe the family or things like that. And we have to be very careful of how to deal now with the same situation. Do we have, to split up from the family? Do we have to so we make sure we don't meet them again? Maybe do we have to get others on our side, or maybe we have to, that's it's a huge struggle. So if we meet them again, then we are very uncomfortable. We don't feel good at all seeing them. So that's one thing that happens when we see this person who has turned the back on us, as an enemy. But then let's see how it is if we see that person in the other way. So if we have been kind to them, and then they turn the back on us, we can still think, okay, I really gave my best. I really cared about this person. I really did all I could to support them. And therefore, I really wish that they will be well. I don't stop wishing them well. I continue wishing them well. And then that will have the benefit that we do not have to, struggle about trying to stop adversary circumstances from happening with that person. And we don't have to busy ourselves so much with taking all kinds of steps to be careful of how things will work out. And we can just be peaceful. That's all.
일단 미기 시가지요래. 시가 캔서 가려졌으나 빼나 소소기 뭐마 지 가데서기 미직 그러 나와 도드서 미직 소소기 빼나 지 나와 야부지 도드서기 미도지 더 수로지나야 거기 야부제베이나 야부들 지야디 임바치 냠바 제바이나 냠바데야 지지나 야부제송 세네가라 저기 딜 서포트지야 가란즈 미 지다 kumshijik di yore garan sola. Na madosa dojik michigina tachik stani garan so mik thonga da min goa sangi stani na madongi michigi. Ta koge yakbu lega legi yoba suzuki ha goyina ya ta mira dhugu mardi.
So there's something very funny about our human character, which is that when we like somebody, then when they do something good, then of course we are very happy and we might praise them. But then if they do something not so good, then we will say, oh no, but we will try to defend them, that, oh no, it wasn't that bad. They didn't mean it like that. They did have a reason for that. But if somebody whom we don't like does something good, something great, it's like we cannot accept that.
Tiende koge nyemba jewa te nyemba yinba jero. Tira te na kona meba je, tukja yinba je. Yakbu jewa ina ta ti kage madhe, yakbu resne kane ya duro ma je. Tene gasa ore, ta ko je insa roa sto je nangme la shaya ro je yungu yo ro. Ta dinde ge shiga yungu ore, di kare sana susu ge je sem ge tacho de la ra le de gore. Yunden yo ba ge pemge mare tatang la pegyo, tatang yungu ne de ra le de yore.
Yeah. So of course, if somebody, whether we like them or not, if they do something that is bad, that's negative, it doesn't depend on how we see or like this person. It just is a bad action. And but often, even verbally, we cannot acknowledge that they did something that was bad if we like the person. So why is that? It actually that we are just looking at the situation from our own perspective. We are not really looking whether the action itself is good or bad. In that case, we are just ignoring the actual facts and we just interpreting or maybe even looking away from what they did because we like them.
대인도 당이 공도 쉬어나시 수수기 배 녀부 인등이 미로다 달린 돌린 로자기 집이기 뒤지 세소나 뒤뒤 세베가 소다 다이 장주선비기 냠렌터도 땅 얘기 야공할 제베이 미투네 돈도 제기 아 레저 망즈 제기 소소로 야부 고랑기 수수용을 야부 제나다 마체라 나다 가리네 가랑니 고라미 약슈이 디랑 가나 샤샤베나 딜라 케베마도 동해다 쩨스키릭 뜻하는 연구 말에
Therefore, returning to the example of the verse, when somebody who is close to us turns the back on us and becomes hostile towards us, although we were so kind to them, then the bodhisattva practice is to just continue doing good, wishing them well, actually wishing them even more well than you did before. So it doesn't depend on what they do, but you as your in your bodhisattva practice, you continue to wishing them well and to sending your support in whatever form they way. And that will only be beneficial and bring a lot of win-wins for you. And it's not going to have any negative side effects if you do that.
네. 다 주변 바데 니에탑 람도 체로와서 란다 냠바 멤베 지오이 ngajo wangi ni에탑 제나야 라마신도 그비다니 지지오 렘바케슬라레 yes.
Now we go to verse 17. That's transforming derision into the path. It says, even if a person on an equal or lower footing than yourself is so arrogant as to treat you condescendingly, looking up in respect to this person as a teacher, this is what bodhisattvas do.
스타티치나 tsidir le lao re laba to ta dinzo gi kien dinzo de ngara zu jiso na le sa we jira dinzo rig de yungu re ro re tini ta de la son do je ran la nye tab jena yang lama shindu ani ji ju le ma ges la nis ta dinde ngara zu jiso na de sa we jira jiso na 제 정보를 망용 연구열에 장가 망부 연구를 전도 연구 연구를 다음 장가나 마디바 까브레 제가 미게 소소라 냠주시에바 윤댕게 돈이나 자도 윤댕게 돈이 멤버이나요 다 지금 주노르게 돈이나 다 냠랭게 돈이 그래 근데 지금 소소라 지금 지금 근데 소소라 근데 전주라 소바함 니에베 탑든도 잖아요 다 데라 다 다긴 나시 다디 상출라 다이지 다 냠발라 다주니 용고래
So that's something that will happen in our lives. Maybe to some people it will happen more, so to some less. But it's going to happen that there will be people who are arrogant and treating us condescendingly, no matter whether they are positioned equal or lower to us or higher, wherever. But that may happen that in terms of whether it's in terms of wealth or in terms of qualities or level of practice or positioning in life, that they will have a position, and from that position, whether it's lower or equal to us, that they are criticizing or condescending towards us. And again, as before, this situation can be seen in a positive way or in a negative way. That's what.
다 본도 쇼바나 신기 다 데라 렉 찍바레 다 데라 렉 제야로 그래로 된 데라 라마 주올렘 바게슬라 다 수조가 라마 다올라 타바이나 당원에 수조가 라마 첸데나 때바이나 주연샤 통마레 렉샤마 통마레 된데다 된데게 토니야 말아서 로장바 람도 키에토바 된데잖아 하고 이래 대마존아야다 다긴나시 제가 라버 telaya tsewa 아니 제 양 까브레 제 라머 tsewa 라마신도 규바 제바다 야 지가 티테스드 야 제단 미키 양 카시 딜라 논트지 양 제단지 요래 미카시 논트지기도 때 가라서나 저런 제단데 야 독자 시오래 때인데 니주의 닌지기 인세 수수 시오지 인비토니야 nga kaso nyamlen jigi yu nyamlen jumsen to chene ti chura dukjare nga yagu yimbis tinde keja mare tata negos
So there again, the way of practicing with this is just the same as explained before. So here it's even saying to see that person, looking up to them as if they were your spiritual teacher. And of course, if we look at someone with the eyes of seeing them as our spiritual teacher, then we will only see good things in them. And the practice is again that we just continue with our positive intentions and that we give them even more love the more badly they behave. And there's one thing about this wording, giving them respect, like as if you would towards your teacher, seeing them as your teacher. Sometimes we mistake these instructions and we think that I'm a practitioner, so I see that you do something wrong, so I'm saying, oh, I am pitying you, so I have a wrong compassion, which sometimes can transform into pity. So I feel better than you because I'm practicing better and you are doing something wrong. So I have compassion towards you, then might feel as pity, which is not the right way how it's intended. Lasso.
디 알아도 지속이 나라야 디 슈숑보 연구도 디 가르스나 베나 어 베나 미 다지 미 파르보디 이거는 소소랑 다지 갱년 바로 이나다 데네 로저로 제베나 다 코나 마다바레 어 마다바레 삼노 따야 근데 연구여러 얘네야 그냥 가시게 몸네 자주란 레니에 레니에 바레 주란 탑도레 다티에 주란 람간 노르도스네 삼삼티 연구도 베나 쿠란조 삼노 땅초데 야보레데 얘네야 삼노 땅초데 고마 람가랑 조고도스나 양답이 람도 조고도 조고미도스나 양 조고요 말레데 라 칼라키아 데 람양다고 레 라고 요레데 나 영마 람양다고 조고도 멘도세데 아직 어디 파제 조고 메베소로 근데야 근데게야 직도 수직래야 요래
And like we see somebody doing something negative or like maybe harming us, although we were kind towards them, and of course we will think mentally that that wasn't good what they did, and we are allowed to think so. That's nothing wrong with that. But then we become really judgmental and say, oh, you are accumulating negative karma, you are going onto a wrong path, you are doing mistakes. Like we become very judgmental and with a feeling of superiority. So that is really not the point here. It's not the point. That is not part of our path to judge like that. It's okay to observe and say, okay, I think this action is not a positive action, but it's not okay to become so judgmental about it and think that now you are superior than this person because they are doing something wrong and they are accumulating negative karma. Lasso.
베나 갑레 연구도 데 나란소 남바 조금 많이 봐 다출루 신다 이슈로 다 디멘베게 된대로 베나 코란소 라라데 대바다 예시 주기요로
Mm.
라다 다 된솔라데 대바 주기요레 에나야 다직 코란소게 제베나 미션다라고 질러 때는데 다추나 닌제 거 다지나 거기 다디도 미티게 줄라 닌제데 기기 요래 에나야 직다 코란 좋았음진 탐지 제 간소레 아 슬라라 지 케미닝 사마 켈링이 말아 미사마 그러고 지 가지 줄을 켈링이 말해 사마 가가로 다디엔데 거소 미다 지가 이슈가 라라 케미닝이 된소라 지 베나 다 코나 냐와 도그레 에나 지 따당 그 코나기 돈이 야오레데 된소 그래도 냐와 도그레 년손을 도그레 스네 지가 지 셰다 셰야 된데 지 인구여로
Mhm.
근데 소소긴군이 약부 랑바 약부 지기 요삼 내 카게 저도 냐와도 그래서 가야서 되고 주디를 냠는 지기 민도스 에 저도 닌제 신데스네 메츠 코나 딘데로 도샤베나 고랑 경우에는 또 펜도 유저래 마도 바로 벌 펜 도구 레다 말했으나 되게 관리 하고 쉬우차 되요. 근데 즉 라와다. 근데 소속에 상노탄 대바이나.
And you know, this is something that actually occurs very often, even among different religions, let's say Buddhists or between Buddhists and Christians or Christians and Muslims and so on and so forth. Generally, there might be common principles, like we are praying to a certain God, or to a Buddha, we are having faith towards them. But then when we look at the other practitioner from another religion, then we start saying or thinking, you know, your path, maybe we even say it, that your path is not really a great path, and that you are not praying to the right God, so you are going to hell in the future, or things like that. So we pity them because they are not on the right path, but we are on the right path. So that's actually really not good. We might, you know, there is really can be a condescending quality that you feel you are on the better path than the other, and that's absolutely not at all beneficial and actually goes against the bodhisattva practice. So maybe it can even be that you pity, you say, oh, I have compassion for those who are not on the path, for those who are not practicing the path that I'm on. But that's not really compassion. It's more of a pity, and it's absolutely not what is uh, part of the bodhisattva practices. It's not beneficial at all to do that. That's all.
레티인데 ngānsu kāyāsi nā chidā ngānsu nāngpasan jibhigi ñamlēn de tāpe nā tila rinpa yore nānti nāni tsō ngānsu tīkpa chenpo rāi na shenduyāngi samno chire shenduyāngi samno ke tola tāwa yāng tāpa kia chūyā chire tāwa yāng tāpa kia de tāwa yāng tāpa sēya de chidā chik shēne tawa yang tawa shēne mīdhū ngūdhū chē kore, mīdhū ngūdhū chēne kē mēne na tabshī yō mā rē, rō, Kurāṋ tsō ki mēpa mē sāwa na chūshī shio bā na chū mātō sū na tē Kurāṋ ki lē rē, kē tila usu jaya lā sō bā tā, tēndē kia pēndō shirā yō mā rē, tā chī bāchā rō shā na mā tō. Tēndē, tā ngā rā tsō shindā rā nyab chū shē rō tā, tēnzō ki rīk tēnzō tē nō nīngi mā rē.
That's all.
대디 말아서기 게라 선노다 직당 말아서 지소라 선노다 말아서 추로데 말아서 지소 말아서 메세나라 선노다 저 지금 레마도 지가로 미신다 레지에다 미시라 지 파카 칠로데야로 말이 카 나운도 때네 근데 나운라 아니 야부 차야지다 아니 직 상부 차야게 탑시 다야지래 시랍 기야다 네 직접하게 돈이 가래
And there are really different, you know, also stages within the Buddhist practice. So, for example, within the Mahayana, there's the stages of practice concerning the orienting oneself towards benefiting others, and there is the generating the correct view. And then, if we learn about these things, for example, the proper view, then of course we can speak to others about it. We can introduce them to what they say in Buddhism, and you know, we can sort of plant a little seed maybe of something that we have learned. But if then they are not interested in knowing more, then we don't stay there and insist and you know, judge them maybe for not being interested as much as they should. And we absolutely do not insist on having to convert anyone. We leave them to themselves. We have left maybe a little impression by just sharing something, and then it's you know, also their karma based on where they are drawn to, what is their inclination towards what path, what things. And we absolutely do not start to behave or think we are superior now because they are not interested, so they are more low than us. So it's about these things, sharing and inspiring each other on these topics. It's really something that we should do among us as practitioners, where we can actually inspire each other and support each other of growing more knowledge, or maybe even, you know, pointing out when things we notice something that's not really that's maybe not correct or things like that. So we, instead of going out and looking outwards, we should stay and look towards our fellow practitioner friends.
라서 드니 알아서 섭지 sikje chobje la tona ta
Yeah.
chobje dire to göba lamdu kebas
Good.
shomba la sowe pongba shin sowe pongje ta do mi ni samje ne dang denje ta chang la re drogon de do da la len je chen shomba me ba gyasa la le yens ta digi göba lam chire to.
So then verse 18 is the next one, which is about transforming loss onto the path, into the path. So the verse says, even if you are deprived of the bare necessities of life, you are treated disdainfully and you are afflicted with serious illness or exposed to damaging influences, taking the negativity and the suffering of all beings upon yourself without once feeling disheartened. This is what bodhisattvas do.
알아서 세미 슌빈 내가 들어와 세미 슌빈 내가 용해요래 세미 슌빈 내가 쓰나 뽀빨라베 내가 들어와 뽀빠
Yeah.
아디 가르스나 당아 페나 네일 다 네지 리튼 속에 소소 나르스나 당아라 네게 지소라 샤비 슈투베게 다 뉴바 메바 소소 하고네 뽀빠 슈메 근데 야메나 소소 다지가 샘게 로션바 조보 집이나 샘게 리듬 지우메바 집이나 잡조게 지 주노다 반조야나 소소라 윤데 라소바 된소기 차네 매네 미 된소기 전혀 주시네 소소그 로션바 तदिनाजिक लो शुंबे के तदने सो ति डामे ना तो मंगबुल तेने 용쇼고 사지도 नेला तेने ता 지미기 니주 셰바 zam마데 용구 말아 좀세 망부지 레트고로
So this verse is talking about when we get discouraged, and discouraged means when we lose hope or courage. And that can happen not because of one reason, but because of many reasons, of course. For example, because of illness, maybe we become ill and then we cannot serve in society anymore. We can't contribute in any way anymore because we are ill, or maybe we get discouraged because we lose property or belongings, or maybe we lose a certain reputation or the ability to do something that we previously did. And then people start looking down at us. We cannot anymore perform as we used to. So there are so many reasons why we can get discouraged.
데인데 저다 미기 메시게 나라 뽀빠 shum비기 뒤직 살뒤 세야요래 로 미라 뽀빠 shum비기 뒤 세야요래 디세베 내가서 디 추다 돈에야 뽀빠 shum비기 뒤 세야요라 추다 만드르고 돈에야 지 뽀빠 shum비야요래 이제 뽀빠 시나 마시나 가브레 망보를 때는 용그래 근데 용사회 쇼고라 뽀빠데지가 쇼르베게 로shum 사바이나 데니 제 레가지 레고 삼바이나 레토고 말해 데인데고서 되게 쮸게 차데 슈shum보 용고요래 가래라 용고서 마음바게 레가가 돌아 듬바로 마음바게 듬람라 아니 데 로shum바지 종서나 발시 용고래 데인데고서 다 알아서 로 shumbaji yungba ina ya maungba de setup chide ngana zo khadu ina ya de che de ke shumba shadare.
And this is something that we will all experience at one point or the other in our lives. That's certain. Sometimes it's connected to our Dharma practice. Sometimes it's in worldly concerns. It can be in so many ways that this can happen. And this is something that we all experience, so many of us, or we have experienced, or we will experience. So that means we are losing our courage, our our courage, and then we maybe are not able anymore to work, and so on and so forth. And it has a huge danger. These losing courage can really lead us, if we don't manage to get out from that at some point, it can really bring us down and down and down, that even in the future we don't manage to get back up on our feet. Sometimes that can happen, so it can become an obstacle for the future. So it's really important that we try to find methods that can help us to get out of that pit hole, so to say, of the pit hole of losing hope, losing the courage. We really have to try to get out of that when it happens. That's all.
And the Jimmy and to drop Dromola so Pama Punjito Lo Shimbe Kapsu Tende Ne Nedana Yobaina Tati Chita Shara Tachuluk Tamadena Chik Shiu Geti Nanchung Ta Marumba Nesuchi Chite. Tera Nanchung Tane Tanying Mare. Lo shumachi yon sawe chila di dogwa di tabdi yinchi minchi ye goya ge chungbu shi re. Ro, chujo ge toni re la, jiden ge toni lo shumachi yon sawe na, dela nang chung dani pa mikura semba shum dasani pa diga rang sha sha ro, dinde dani ma re, ro. Dinde, da dali boba shum saya de ngoma ngune chani ge nyeba la soba ta, je nele taba la soba ge lo bette kura, mene tripes chani ta, 다 근데 긴내다는 레슨 와이나 띵하나 주 인지 민지가 서 탑지에 이게 좀 것이라.
Mm. So, sometimes it might not happen to us. Maybe we are witnessing that somebody from our friends or within our family, relatives, that they get into a state of discouragement, of losing hope, and so on. And sometimes it can be, concerned to one's spiritual path. Sometimes it can be concerned to worldly affairs. Whatever is the case, whenever it happens that we witness somebody falling into the pit hole of losing hope, losing courage, we should never disregard that or saying, oh, it's nothing big, it's gonna pass, it's no big deal. No, actually, we should really be aware that to find methods to make this person come back out of the hole, to really, whether it's they have fallen in because of worldly reasons, or maybe it's connected to the spiritual path, we really should try to get them out of there, to help them recover. Lasso?
다 다다 내가 수 게슬라네 다도 당외나 딘데긴 내수 중바이나 라리양 예 말레 저 라베게 이 심진의 신된 집에게 뽑았대 아니 만년바 이 송구에게 중부했어야다디 그 전주 선배님한테 전화돼 딘데랑 선당고요래.
So in here we are looking at the practice of the Bodhisattvas. So here the Bodhisattvas, whatever discouragement can happen in life, it's saying that you should never ever lose hope, lose courage. That's what it's saying on verse 18. Lasso.
나서 드린 알아서 직제 줄고 조로와 남도 키러와스 냠바 다션 로마치우 또 남도 부에 논도 도주차 시베 번조님보 메스니 갱밤메 바캬슬라니스.
Now we go to verse 19, which is transforming wealth into the path. It says, even if you gain fame, people bow down before you, and you amass riches like those of Vaishravana, regarding worldly values as ephemeral, and thus remaining free from vanity. This is what bodhisattvas do.
제다 다랑기 메셀라 다기 공도데 겐옌바 게 겐옌베게 아니 뒤세연 되고서 람라 계단 간데 봐. 또 도단디 데레. 또 다다데 데레 도바 게 상부 근데 람라 키엔도 이 컨디션에 람도 키고래 되게 도단도 그래.
So we have seen so far several verses that were busy with bringing negative circumstances onto the path, how to do that. And now we are looking at positive circumstances, how to bring them onto the path when positive circumstances occur in life. That's what.
아연스나 배나 알란조 지 취징에 된줄라 니가 처시 가르스나 알아서 셈 도부 부수 도베게 내가 수 최대 제야 배렐하오로 지레
Chuchi,
알아 추추기 도다 제야 지
yeah.
이시기야 된조데 렐하오 연구래 알아 가서도 거서 레와데 퐁스로 레와데 메로 레와 라서 지라다 지 추기 돈에 지 라야지 탑시단 거로
Yeah,
다 다지 딜레 도바 소소다 여바데 참마 라사에 쇼라 추기 트레한테 라도 그래 시다시다 레이트 가고래
really. You know, there is one huge danger for Dharma practitioners, which is that when things go bad, when life is really dark, at that point we remember the Dharma, we remember to practice. You know, it's like all hope is lost, so we try to hold on to the Dharma, so at least we hope to get something out of there. And instead, when everything goes smoothly, you know, life is being wonderful, generous with us, and whatever, in that moment, we forget about the Dharma. Or it becomes difficult to remember the Dharma. That's what.
그래 디엔드 그래 다 디엔드 거도 다 디드 강한 용어로서 소소게 쌈다 캥바디 용어래 캥바 땅아 라송 잭송 쌈베게 근데게 지금 되발라 캥바라 소 용어로
Mm.
드니 캥바 용어라 때네 드니 상마 여바데 라사웨 슈고라 드니 믹세자고야 민도스 라사웨데 라차레 이 믹세 가야서는 알아서 세데데 샤나 마샤나 주다 롱주 던절라 때네 초고 요래 드니 마시는 알아 속에 지금 수부디 요사웨처라 세싱이 연구요래 세데 딱 가서 그래 지데 세트 코로 내가 랑게 즉 소와라 된 거야 계신 곳이래 소와 되게 주로 표준 소보지 라사와잖아 다다 산노타야 마도 마음 봐 조지된다 올라 산노타이 꿈부시라래
So what will happen is when life, you know, goes really smooth and we have everything that we need, maybe even more than that, we will start to become really proud and think, oh, I'm settled, it's done for me, I'm fine, everything's great. So of course, when we have a body, it means that we have to live, which means that we also need wealth, we need possessions to make a living. That's necessary. But when we have everything and everything is in place, then we normally start to forget about the future. That's what.
마음밖에 삼는데 라도 요래 마음밖에 듬발라게 두다 민도스 체네로 소소게 다데 네가들라 삼노타나로 다데게 가라도 삼노 삼노나 땅바이나 답변은 어 그래서 나는 쪽에 제가 세대긴 배로지 샤바이나 데 나는 쪽 지부지단 대화대 다다 촌도 한거요래 로 마음밭 소와 레전 다다 촌도 슈셔요래 아니 데인도 다다 촌도 요데 디 초와 지부단 대화지 다다랑 초고야게 초와데 슈슈뭐 요데 되니 다다랑나지 마음벌 토베야기 잘라 지금 레와데 다다랑나 지 용차와이나 마음벌 셔다 선노다 뉴뉴레 다다들 쇼충보 선노 당기래
So what does it mean? You know, it's like when, no, not when, like we want to be happy and full of joy right now. We don't want to be happy in the future. We want to be happy right now. So if I am really wealthy or I have all the things abundantly in my life, then I'm really thinking about being happy in the here now. I don't think so much about or worry so much about the future, because then I'm really much more busy with the here now, which we are anyways in our desire to be happy, because we desire to be happy right now, not like in 100 years. That's all.
pena pena choga jime ro kashi pena tata chobu chomo che maon bala ta kuran su changsa jamne dinde ke jiden ke sam kasore dinde sam kongi yorwa
Yeah.
mi sa shola maon bala kasore ti ta pena tata chi chi pension ke trewa de yabuji yo sa shola ro 야구지 요사에 주거라 마음바디 리인샤샤 지기 요래로 다다 내가 중세지 줄 성화이나 마음게 눈바도 성화라 하고 요래 대인데 마음치야 알아서게 초ade 다다 랑게 내가 될라야 슈춤봉한 쪽에 릴라이스 나다 될라야 땡데 요래.
You know, it's like when, let's say, a couple plans in the future to marry. But then maybe the relationship goes so well that they just assume that in the future it will be just as good as it is now. So they don't worry so much about the future, because right now it's so good, you know, that they almost think it's gonna stay like this forever, because right now it's really good. Like you don't think that it's gonna change, and you don't have much to worry about the future. So it means that when in the present everything is really positive, we lose the aspiration or the outlook for the future. So the outlook at the future really depends on the quality of life of the present. So whether we think about the future or not depends on what we have at the present, in the present. And when we have everything, when everything runs smoothly, we lose the impulse or interest to worry about the future, because worrying out of the future depends on what we have or do not have right now. And when we have a lot, if we obtain something right now, then we don't have so much worry about the future because we have it right now. So we think it's going to be like that later on anyways. It's going to stay like that. That's all.
그래다 디인데 알아서라 캥발라 수보 가제 여바이나 가다 긴 상부체네 스텝 내가서 캥바 가지 종바이나 다디디 수수기 캥바데 베트 코랑 첼레 가바나 신게 다지 직심 쇼샤와 심 캥바 그나 년다게 왕도 파 쇼샤와 Tēnā shīngi junor ki ki wāngla pā sēmba shor sōngwa ina, nian chīga tsēnā, tēnē tīk niandā tā nor tu ñamdu yundu, sōsō ki shor sāwi ki sēmda yāng kūk tuyā di kāli kāpu shirāji yungu rī. Tē yundu tē lē chāng, tēnzō tā nekab ki ngā rāng tsū tsōwa la pēmbe ki tē rēs, tēndē tāwi ki tōla ya, tēnē chīka lamdu kiena mātō, ko dēgā rāna chīka 제 년바랑다 년다게 나로 소소 지그 지 샘드 쇼스 와다 때디나 신게 노라 쇼션 와이나 디다 주로와 도그레데 주로와 도사베치다 이 소소게 메셀을 따고 주로와지 태그레 델레장 방본에 가라 조텔라 아니 디 삽선나네 디니 첼 망가와 람도 키토야 되게 shum으시라리
You know, so therefore when things run smoothly, when life has a good wave, a high wave, then we shouldn't you know, become as how to say, over the right amount proud, or you know, really hooked onto that, because we will lose ourselves there. We will start, you know, maybe losing ourselves in the pride. We will lose ourselves hunting for fame, or maybe we lose ourselves in wealth. the abundance of wealth makes us thirsty of wealth, so we only start to focus our life on wealth or things like that. And once that has happened, once we have lost the mind into such a direction, it's very difficult to bring it back, bring it back. Of course, therefore, this verse is saying it's important that you care for your life, that you do have the necessities for your life standard at the moment where you can have a survival. That's necessary to have that, to have certain amount of wealth, but don't, get lost in all these loops of hunting for fame, hunting for more, hunting for wealth. Don't lose yourselves there, which means you have to be heedful, mindful, careful from now on that you keep your mind in the right measure with how you relate to these material objects or to these material worldly things. You have to really keep your mind at bay in the right measure to hold it, to give it a container, a limited container, so that you are careful from now on. That's all.
Tene ta ngara zo siki nishu patirwa dangyo lamdo kirawas. Rangi shetan trawo mato na chiro trawo toshin pedwa chu teche jamda ninje mabongi rangyo dolo yasila le yes.
Now we come to verse 20, which is transforming anger into the path. If you fail to subdue your anger inside you, your enemies in the outside world will increase while you are struggling with them. So subjugating your own mind with the armies of love and compassion, this is the practice of Bodhisattvas.
다 dangyo lamdo kirawas. Ta ngara zo da jiden rawa cha soina chik shetan jike na shetan de chiro la ngara zo segiro. 다 달에 티보 챔피언 냠랭 갑텔라 시단데 자워 랑게 셈네 중고 여바데 하고 제네 드네 랑게 셈줄에 여베 시단데 담보 다 투리아스나 다도 디 메탑수에 탑시당 거래 디 메탑데 간데게 돈에 탑시당 거랬으나 잠바도 닝제라 파주네 드네 다디 간수그래 람도 키야 네. 소소게 줄라 여베 shedan jurtuna ye lamdo kiraba degana chade yor. Shedan lamdo kiraba.
Now, normally, when we are not familiar with the Dharma teachings, then we generally assume that anger is something that arises based on outer circumstances. It's their fault, or they did something wrong, so I get angry. But in the Buddhist teachings, we see that they say that anger actually arises out of one's own mind stream. And it's saying, so here you have to tame your mind, and therefore also tame or train the way how you meet such emotions like as anger. So it says, use the tools of loving kindness and compassion to transform anger, transform or subjugate, tame your own anger with the tools of loving kindness and compassion. And that's how we then bring anger onto the path. That's all.
Shedan de kiyabe na jambada ninjige ngola jurya chekdang. Je yul chek da katsi suzu rangjula shedan kiyana di jambada ninjila jurya. Shen la kiyo na shen zila jambada ninje ane dindega sambala jurya. Re. Da julu judan dawo de la da rinpa mangbu yungu yore.
Yurtang, lasso. So there are different ways of how we can transform anger. There are different ways. So one way is that we transform anger into love and compassion. That's one way, that the anger is transformed into love and compassion or loving kindness. And another way is that when we get anger, that we then actually generate love and compassion, loving kindness towards the object of our anger. That's all.
레티인도 된대야 연구를 야 되면은 알아서 당분에 배나 두둔 가자만 개념네 게 림바도를 잘서나 당분에 들어왔음지 탐지라 전부다 닝지게 제가 지금 사변지 답사에 쇼글라 드네 시단다 니 드네 다 된소데 레라우 게야 데 레라우 연구 말해 된 배나 두둔 갑자기 mikpa 시나 검샤바이나 편도요래
And also, if we practice the Chandresi sadhana, the Chandresi practice, then that's also planting a very strong seed where we cultivate compassion and loving kindness towards all beings, so that again makes it more difficult for anger and hatred to arise. So that the practice itself of Chandresi is already planting a lot of seeds of loving kindness and compassion that make it more difficult for anger to arise. And therefore, then also just the visualization from the Chandresi practice to use that in a moment of anger can already be very beneficial.
다 샤유람도 키르바스 데베 윤델렌스 추단도 지단 제신 세버 펠버추 간라 신체 제베 무분은 탈파와케스
And then we come to verse 21, which is transforming the verse on transforming desire into the path. It says, indulging in sensual pleasure is like drinking salt water. The more you consume, the greater is your longing. Forswearing here and now those things that engender clinging and desire. This is the practice of bodhisattvas.
다데 다 차이 조데 조데다 현자 다 강사라이나다 데메베게 차다 응위베게 리카운트로 라이나야 저초버레 데인드 간데 간 제페나 강사라 강사라 신샤기에 봐야나 제 다지금고 주노를 롱주든슬라 신샤 다든데 간데라야난 자는 자룽거래
So here it's talking about desire or clinging, and this desire or clinging can occur towards any kind of object. So this verse is not particularly saying it's clinging or desire of a person or of some objects, but it's referring to all kinds of desires, to all kinds of clinging. That's all.
was being on 다 되베기 윤데 되게 무슨 소바 다치베 갑 된데진네 갑수 갑된데게 치나 되네 다치다 되베 윤데 알아서 셈데라야 되바 심주요 말에 되바 심주메디 데 되요 가지 론체 바이나야 되바 심주메디 돈도 론친도게 삼노치 연구지 되데 다 아직 되요라야 다기 공도 체만하지 소소 셈도 지 베트 쇼송 와이나 되네 소소 냠레 dunzolaya 냠레 레 네소 소소게 메세기 닝보도 될라야 가리치 메세기 닝보 여러다 메세 여러와 메세기 조도데 답이나 빼지 샤샤나 소소 제 조 파마라 샤비쇼야 소소게 침 소소게 심장도이나 침장라 되네 지금 세레 규레 이네 둔속에 돌아 제 강에 맞춰야겠 랭게데 지금 미순다지라야 여러와 소소 파마 단지레 소소게 아니 다지가 지금 싱모이나다 아니 조조 아니 다 소도소도이나 소소게 침다오직 제 야부지 차야 제단 두부 마샤바기 소소를 랭긴 요래 당하라 다들 지된 돈에 차서 말아 대직 가서 지된 미세로지기 랭긴로지 차대 요래 다디도 미치기 소소기 주도래 소소기 게게 롱줄라지 셴바 조주메바든데 지 칸나 차송 바이나 소소기 미세기 나라 샵지 쉬고야 된소기 랭게 된소데 봐 제가 봐 매바차 드네 투쇼차 투쇼도네 예스스 파마나 샵지 쉬고야 돼 쉬마도 소소라 펜토고야라 펜토마도 펜토 먹어야 된소 드네 가서 투쇼트라 든데 체메기 다 든데 망부지 연구요라 든데기 주야 연구요래
You know, we do not have a mind that will ever be full enough, satisfied enough. Our mind will always want more. So even if we have everything, the mind will still want for more because it just is never satisfied. So if we lose ourselves, if we lose our mind towards desire and clinging, that will create a lot of problems, both for our practice, but also for the meaning of life. We will lose meaning and purpose and responsibility towards life if we get hooked onto desire, onto clinging. For example, if it's our responsibility, part of the purpose of life and responsibility in life is to serve our family, our parents, and our children, brothers, siblings, so that we actually carry a responsibility to care for each other. Now, especially, of course, towards people in our family. And if we are too strongly oriented and thirsty for possessing and owning, and therefore a lot of desire and clinging towards things, then that will really harm the meaning of life. In that sense, we will lose sight and interest of really serving and caring for our family, providing them with whatever it is, food, with enough, clothing, with a roof over the head and things like that. We will also start wasting a lot of time for useless efforts towards accumulating more and things like that. So there are so many shortcomings with getting lost in desire and clinging. That's what.
디엔드 되연라 세송야 요마레 다 디엔드 되게 중요하게 차 제대나 제대를 대비게 변한 추긴 양내도 졸라야 지 종구 정보지열에 디엔드 다 된sol라 삼노 땅에 디엔 지가라서 지게 젠바다 시신에게 돈에 지금 삼노 야보지 땅에 디니 다 된sol라야 자 말 제대로 론줄라 된데게 나라 쇼 삼아나 쇼 차버래 얘네 마옹발라 다 수수이나야 삽삽지기 니 직 되베 연대데 롱수 줘베나 줘베게 체 마가와 체레 마가와 데 된데게 토니 수수게 초와 랑 기야게 초와랑 직제 토와 잠지기 아니 되베 롱주들라 다들 저 롱드 쪽으로 메시지 계산해 주고라 되는데 다직 줘베나야 체레 마가와 어딘지 신샤이나야 뱀 가스월에 신자 디가 원내게 차바디 파파 매바서야라서 버든데게 돌아준다고 해야 돼. 게 충분시라래. 근데 되게 니시 적지 바대체.
Mhm. There is really no limits to our desires, to the desire of sensual objects. There's no limit to that. And it's really can be a huge obstacle for our Dharma practice as well if we lose ourselves in desiring pleasure. So what is really required is that we consider very carefully our way of interacting, dealing with the manners of owning, experiencing worldly pleasures and owning things. So we have to apply mindfulness, we have to apply carefulness, wakefulness of how we deal with that. So of course, we need certain amount of possessions, of property, or certain amount of wealth for our living. That's really important, but it should not go over the limit. There has to be a containment of how we interact with possessing things. That has to be contained. So we need the right amount of things. We do not need more than the right amount. Otherwise, we get lost in the immensity, the vastness of possessing. So what's really important that we try to dissolve, to work on having less and less desire and clinging. And if we already lost ourselves, maybe right now we realize, oh, I was lost for many years in pursuing wealth, then make sure that you don't repeat the same behavior in the future. Make sure that you look and are mindful around how you deal with possessions and wealth. That's all.
다데 바도 가자 군줍 전주게 냠레라 냠샤도 지톱니기 나네 다데 지톱이 냠레도 삼아 차버려.
Yeah. So if you remember when we started speaking about the verses of relative bodhicitta, we saw that the text first explains relative bodhicitta connected to the post-meditative phase. And here with this verse now, we have concluded the instructions on relative bodhicitta in the post-meditation.
다데 내가 수다 냠샤도 지톱니가 침버려. 냠샤데 다 다신 제와기 냠네 잠바도 닌체게 또 동네 스나다데 냠네도 쪼르데데레 데나야 디나니 당아라서 나라서 직소소 지우지된 바인 비차네 또 제도긴네 갑라 람도 키라데 케좀 시다레 데도 공도 강친 버튼소 나라서 메세나가 직쟁에 스나다 게 상보 가요 직체바이나 또 되게 지금 랍자 시송기 돈이 지도토바이나 예수스기 메세나야 강에 나래자 용어 같은 소 차베기 배요래.
And also these verses actually have at the same time, some verses have also talked about relative bodhicitta during the meditative phase. For example, when we talked about the cultivating loving kindness and compassion connected also with the Tonglen practice, the practice of taking and giving. So that was a very important point of cultivating relative bodhicitta on the cushion in your meditation session. And then also the verses on cultivating relative bodhicitta in the post-meditation, so during our daily lives. That's also extremely important, especially for us being lay practitioners. So we are engaging a lot with the world and have a lot of responsibilities there in the worldly daily affairs, where all these verses are teaching us of how to bring into practice these bodhisattva practices and taking them onto the path with all kinds of negative circumstances. So if we can, and even some positive circumstances. So if we can do that, if we can take these advices that have been spoken on bringing onto the path the different positive and negative circumstances, then that's for sure really going to have such a positive impact on our lives that it's going to reduce our struggles enormously. That's all.
네, 저 냠샤 코랑 갑때 냠렌 되제. 아니 제도 그 갑래 믹스 냠렌스나 로 계단에 마도 믹스 제도 때 냠렌도 가서 검 전에 된대도 냠렌 더 내가 같은데 말해. 근데 군조 janjuki nyamne labodo jetoki kabla tenso samno tangcho ki kejare mado yang ji nyamlende ku nyamsha kurangi nyamlende re jetoki kabla tni so samno khande tangko ye dege tolo labja re ne labja khande jego to ta di shison royare mado yang di 냠len sena da 냠len de ro hina gom gi 냠len ro chikde le so labja gi 냠len ro re.
So mainly, one can say that the main aspect of relative bodhicitta in the meditation session is the aspect of tonglen, of taking and giving. And then in the post-meditative phase, the main practice is not something that we are meditating upon, but it's really about an advice of how to think, of how to look at the circumstances that we will face in life. So it's not really that we are meditating there, but it's more an advice for how to think and see the things that are going to happen inevitably.
Laso tene da dundan jangju simjin tala ya ngar na shi nyamsha da jitom ni yare.
So then again, concerning the advices connected with absolute bodhicitta, there's also the advice connected to the meditation practice and then to the post-meditation.
Da nyamsha ge korde de tsuje jung nishu zanyi ba de jidar na wa de da rangi simsingi dune drupi tadan tal dini shene sonzin sema na yela minshi kiasi la le yinsi sayadre.
So then the absolute bodhicitta in practice in the meditation session is explained in verse 22. All phenomena are your own mind. The essence of mind has always been free of the extremes of proliferating concepts. In the light of this perception, imputing to neither the experience nor the experiencer any characteristics, this is what bodhisattvas do.
Da ngoma ngana zo je dojo ke tonne nyamle da dawa sena da nyamle ngoma ro da di cha de yore. Lagdong ki nyamle sena de re da zo tikba chimbe ke ta tuksa ki nyamle ro de tikshi nish zanyin pare. Da di na shi ke zogba chimbe ke nyamle sena da ngana zo chaja chimbe ke nyamle sena da de cha de yore. Jita na wa de da rangi simse ya de. Dende de tsik pe mese sewo yinpa la je ngaran soki nyamle tar thopa ta de rang re.
So these verses are pointing out the practice of the view of the sutra vehicle. This is really the practice of the view of the sutra vehicle. It is also called vipassana or laktong in Tibetan. This is the view of laktong, of vipassana. And then also inside the Mahayana path, this is so-called, that is the ultimate practice in the Mahayana. And also this is the key practice within Dzogchen or Mahamudra, with referring to the line that says, all appearances are one's own mind. So these words are very clear in this verse, and this verse therefore refers to the ultimate practice.
네. ngaran so sangam doji thikba kita kirim da zogrim ni nane da zogrim ki nyamle nane da tar thuk ke da sem maji baji gorwa. Sem maji ba yela maji ba sayadre. Da ki ngo chuki yore la ngaran so da chaja chimbo ki tawa shena ma shena tar thobe ki yishi ki ane nyamle sena da ngo chwe sena da ne te cha de yore de yende da de pe nenga chumbo re de yende da zo do de ga la wo so ge se la len sum ji so de ma na la ngaran so chi sanga ki nyamle ji bo nye je na da do cho ki nyamle ji nye je na ka da sama de la sang de yore.
And when we talk about the Vajrayana path, then we have the phase of the generation phase, and we have the completion phase. So this really refers to the final aspect of the completion phase, the instructions here. So in that stage, in that final phase of the completion stage in Vajrayana, we really need a completely non-contrived, non-altered, non-fabricated mind, a mind that is completely free from any kind of mental constructs. And this is also the final view of Mahamudra. That's the ultimate wisdom of the Mahamudra view. And therefore, this verse is introducing that practice. So therefore, this is a very important verse. It's a very important point, whether it's for practitioners of the Vajrayana or the Sutra vehicle. So this verse inside the 37 Bodhisattva practices is really very essential for both practitioners of Vajrayana and Sutra vehicle.
아, 되게 돌아가게 또 뉴뉴지 주기. 다 배나 제달 나와 대달한 게셈 손들 다 말한 속에 또 차진 야렘바 라올라 차순 바이나 제단 알아서 진네 쇼운데 자슬라레 레데 이나야 대 냠nen데 강라 이나야 잘 쳐버래 다 대더 나는 더 당하나서 더이나 그 유바지레 대나네 깔마 그 유바지레 대는 알아서 그 유바기 냠nen도 나네 냠nen 소로도 차신이 냠nen데 어 대나네 다 제단 나와데다 랑게스는 되고서도 알아서 추 탐지 더 당하나서 나와 바실레 트바치긴바 당보하고 거야 뒤에 어 되네 대하고네 하고 거야 돼 대하고네 심니 되네 트비 타던 들어왔어 어 설소 매인 바로 그 랑시 트라인 바 하고야 돼 rimba 돼
So generally, this treaty is called practices of bodhisattvas, but it doesn't really matter. This work here is not limited to a certain type of path, because we can use this text and apply it for all different kinds of traditions. So for example, we belong to the Kagyupa tradition, and we practice Mahamudra in the Kagyu tradition, so we can use and apply this verse also directly combined directly with Mahamudra practice. So in what way? Rinpoche says, I will just spend a few more words on this. And so the first aspect here concerned to the Kagyupa's Mahamudra practice is the line that says, all appearances are one's own mind. So this is understanding, realizing that all phenomena are one's own mind. And then the second aspect of the practice is to see that mind's nature is by itself, by its own nature, free from mental constructs. In other words, it also means that it is not truly established.
시간 당보다 시간이 버티게 또 거야 돼 너와 다 대니 신의 손진 세만남 예라 마제스 세데 다 또네 냠랭 가르치고 그랬으나 손진게 세마 기세 담지 예라 마제바 아니 람도 키라데 차저 챔병 냠랭들이
So this is what is to be realized, these 2 points, that all appearances are one's own mind, and that mind's nature is by itself naturally free from mental constructs. And once this has been realized, the practice is to not conceptualize neither subject, object, or any kind of characteristic of appearance. And the concepts of subject and object and all the different characteristics of phenomena, they will appear. We cannot stop them from appearing because all phenomena are interdependent. But the Mahamudra practitioner, once he has realized these 2 points, then trains in not conceptualizing anything that appears, such as object, subject, or the characteristics of phenomena. That's all.
제자들이 이해라마 집어들이 다 당보도 되가서 신고야 돼. 당보 또 거야 돼. 또 사회제라 다 가를 하들었어. 내가서 또내 추탐지 매봐. 또 버려대. 매봐 또 버섬지게 지금 말해. 다 신의 마시나 그 다지 추더니 또 서베나야. 미투니 drogo 하가 가라서. 미투니 drogo도 조인 람데라 손생의 세마 타다 용거래. 손생의 세마 타다 용데 가서 딜라 이람 된소 이람 마치바 돈내드니 잠바다 닌지게 아 지금 조든 장와 된소디 자제심벽이 냠네 디차드 여러 데리다 되게 버들링게 주셔야 되라 봐 삼쇼 지금
Yeah, that's all. So first, we realize the two mentioned points. So then we apprehend that all phenomena are not truly established, not truly inherently existing. And once we have realized the nature of phenomena, then still, subject, object, and the characteristics of these phenomena, they will appear. And when that happens, not to conceptualize them, not to create mental constructs around them, and upkeeping the practice of loving kindness and compassion, that is the Mahamudra practice in short. And with that, we will stop this topic here and move on. Yeah. Jigsaw?
No. Sunamdiye tamji sivanya tomne nipe trana pamchene chigana shembal sebe solen rowa sho jambal pavu jetara shembala do sampo teyan teshinde leda kunje jitala yawa de tatam jamsho simjo rinpoche wana chijo jeba nyamba me pa ya konne kondo sho